Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today we've got another round of D&D horror stories. I figured because you all seemed to really enjoy them last time that we would take another crack at them and see what other nonsense we can get up to in this one. This one's brought to us by Shroomish. Pressured to drink underage and then kicked out of the campaign over it. This is a player story. The first long-term campaign I was ever in was in 2014 when I was 19. My boyfriend, 21 at the time, was our DM, and the games were hosted by a couple who owned their own home. The other players varied a lot in age. They were two guys that were in their early 20s, our hosts were a married straight couple in their early 30s, and another guy who was almost 40. Everyone else at the table was aware of my age from day one. Because everyone, except me obviously, was of age, drinking casual at the table was commonplace. For the most part, people held together, but there had been a couple of times where people got a little too tipsy and we had to call a session early. We played with them for about 8 months and met weekly, pretty consistently the entire time. Every single session, the wife would offer me a drink. I felt weird about it, especially since she was so much older than me and I turned her down, until the last time I played with them. I had a long week, just gotten off of work, and decided, you know what, fuck it. I drank 2 beers throughout our almost 5-hour session. I drank somewhat regularly at this point, definitely too regularly, and the 2 beers didn't really have much of an effect on me. She made a joke about how impressive my tolerance was because I didn't drink, and I clarified that I do drink, I just didn't do it outside of my own home typically. After that day, on short notice, both times the day of the game, and without any real explanation, she canceled the next 2 sessions. The day the second canceled session should have taken place, her husband called my boyfriend and said that they didn't feel comfortable having me in their home because I had been drinking there and I was underage. We were both super confused. My boyfriend asked for clarification. The guy acknowledged that yes, his wife had offered me the drink, and then the second one when I went to toss the first bottle, knowing I was underage. But she didn't expect me to accept and didn't know how to backtrack at the point and tell me it actually made her uncomfortable. The wildest part of this was that they expected my boyfriend to continue DMing for them. Yeah, the European brain cannot comprehend this story. This is bullshit. If the concept of them being underage and drinking made them so uncomfortable, why would they even joke about it for the chance that they would accept it? Like, was this some kind of long drawn out plan to try to find an excuse to, kick them off the D&D table? Or, were they just making a joke and not expecting it to actually go awry? Which is dumb because if she was just joking about actually handing the beer out and they accepted it, she'd go, oh no, I was just kidding, I'm sorry. That's all she had to do. But no, instead they not just gave them 1 beer, but 2, and then said that the underage drinking made them uncomfortable when they were the one providing the alcohol. That's fucked, man. D&D horror stories, except this time I think both parties are at fault, so I'm keeping the Reddit user anonymous. Had to leave a fun campaign because a furry was being way too weird, plus other general problem player things. Player perspective. Had to leave a fun campaign because a furry was being really weird. I'm a DM, and I wanted to step up my skills, so I browsed Discord and Dragons, the official D&D Discord server, to find a campaign to join. Prior to this, I had only been a player once. I started playing D&D as a DM and have since I started ages ago. Now, I was technically the 3rd person to join, but the first 2 left before it started. Then, the problem player joined. We'll call him James. I don't know his name as we played online through Discord, then he invited his girlfriend. The full party, plus DM, was as follows. 1. The DM. I just want to say he was an incredible DM. He took every opportunity to let us roleplay and figured out what to do. Most of the session was spent with us talking more than him. James. Bisexual furry who is the boyfriend of another furry in the group, also the problem player. And now this is where I have some problems here, because this is the author's chosen name for this person, and it's Lampshade. Now, this didn't sit right with me, so I did some Googling, and lampshade is oftentimes used as a misogynistic, ableist, or even anti-Semitic term against, people. And why that was used here, I'm not sure, but it doesn't sit right with me in the slightest. Anyways, the girlfriend of James, very lovely person who I love getting to know, also a furry, and Gaia, trans femme furry who likes anime. Honestly, my first impression was kind of off-putting, but she was one of the nicest people I've ever met. 5. Yoko, honestly the odd one out, sort of alpha male energy and obsessed with J-Schlatt. I expected us to have problems with him as the rest of us are all some shade of LGBT, and he sort of gave off the I'm 14 and furries are gross vibes. But me and him ended up bonding over stupid memes. Great times. Followed by myself, I played an elf ice-focused sorcerer named Blinn Elkmean. James played a tabaxi, of course. Shadow Monk, named, and I kid you not, legal D&D name, the Silent Hand. Now, I'm going to avoid making comments as much as I can, but I already have quite a few. I'm going to save them all for the end, but there's already a few things here that I don't like. Now, James's girlfriend played an Aasimar life domain cleric, don't remember her name. And Gaia played a dwarf fighter, based on Dana from Delicious in Dungeon if you've seen that show, named Dana. And Yoko played a life domain cleric too, I don't remember his name. Prior to the first session, we're introducing ourselves, and I make a joke about Gaia's pronouns. They had them in their About Me, Name, and Pronoun section on Discord. Once they said they were trans, I made a light joke about that, and we all laughed. Now, whether you're one of my fellow pronoun person enjoyer individuals, or you're someone who despises pronoun people, we all know that this wouldn't go off with a everyone laughed kind of scenario. This would have maybe been an awkward laugh at most, but this helps point to the fact that this user is an unreliable narrator. This started a conversation about gender and sexuality and all things. I asked Gaia how she picked her name. It was something a little less feminine than Gaia, but gave that same vibe. After she told me, she also said some people said it was a very masculine name, and so I gave her the etymology, which was very feminine, which made her quite happy. This is just one of the countless interactions similar to this one. We all bonded very well. Then the session came. I warned everyone I might have to go partway through. Sadly, the DM had to get groceries for his mom, and so we waited about 2 hours. During this time, James enlightened us with the info that he had been kicked out of 4 previous campaigns for talking over people, being a furry, and being and doing things unrelated to the campaign. The entire time James talked really fast and panicked, like he was doing something wrong and was about to be caught. It started out fine. Gaia really was the center of the conversation, which made sense for her character's personality. Everyone was fine with this. Then came the Silent Hand. Dana was drinking a bit, and the Silent Hand mumbles, "The damn dwarves always drinking," which begins an altercation about fantasy racism. This allows my elf sorcerer to enter. As Dana said some fantasy racist comment about elves, Blinn steps in, his character, and says it is hypocritical of one afflicted by bigotry to turn one's cheek and do such to another. Everything was going well. Well, until the Silent Hand talks. His character knew, and may have been dating, the Aasimar. Here and out, I'll probably refer to James as just the Silent Hand, as James changed his Discord username and profile to match the Silent Hand's persona. As a note, you can do this for individual servers. James probably just changes for the Discord and Dragon server, so that way his account was just simply his, D&D character. The Silent Hand begins describing in detail how he grabs catnip from his bag and eats it. Then the Aasimar, very, very begrudgingly as if she was begged to do this, says, I thought I told you to stop the nip. Only for the Silent Hand to say, come on, can't a cat have a bit of fun every now and then? It's just so hard to quit. Catnip eating noises. The entire interaction felt like furry roleplay. Seriously, we'll get back to all of this in a bit. We went through the rest of the tavern with minor speed bumps. Only problems were that the Silent Hand kept talking over me and others, including the DM. It felt like every sentence was interrupted. Usually it would be whatever his character was doing, including, right then, we can probably do that. Should be a basic job. Would you like to? While the conversation is happening, I sneak some catnip from my bag and eat it very stealthily. Insert weird awkward silence ended by Dana continuing. When the Silent Hand introduced himself, he said, I lurk in the shadows. They all fear my might, but they know not or who the Silent Hand is. And so Dana said, so rogue, a perfect fit for the party. Silence. No, I'm a shadow monk, a monk of the shadows. My fists are deadly and hidden. Rogues are far too messy. This might actually be important for later, so take note of this. As even he says, this will be mildly important later. After leaving the tavern and starting the quest, we encounter a bridge over a chasm. On the other side is some aggressive goblins. There is water at the bottom of the chasm, followed by the Silent Hand stating, I leap over the chasm, hiding in the shadows, and careful not to touch water, growl. I hate water. Me? A dude, there's a bridge right there. The Silent Hand takes the road untraveled to best stay undetected. DM, all right, roll for acrobatics. 12. You fall into the chasm. In the water? Hiss! I hate water. Insert ASMR name. I demand you get me out of this wet puddle at once. ASMR, okay, I reveal my wings and fly down to get him. This will be an important note to take account of for later. And I had to get one of my goddamn books in order to make sure I was right. The DM made this weird whatever the hell into a cool interaction with the bridge, which wasn't supposed to be broken. Was. And so after the silent hand walked over the bridge, it collapsed. Ha! I knew the bridge was broken because of my feline senses. So I used shape water to make an ice bridge. Yes, cue the let it go music. And then the silent hand jumped successfully over the chasm because why not? About here is where I had to leave the session, and about where I decided I was going to leave the campaign, but not where I did leave the campaign. We fought the goblins and the silent hand used sneak attack. I thought he was a monk. Do shadow monks get sneak attack? Surely not, right? We'll talk about that. The silent hand posted art of the silent hand. And this is actually what made me reread the story in a new context, is the fact that he's posting some random person's art of their character that they probably drew themselves on Reddit to flame and mock. Now, there is a key factor. You probably won't notice it because I didn't notice this at first, but apparently the cat has mommy milkers. I didn't know this because it doesn't look like it. But anyways, so yeah, we had a discussion on how I imagine tabaxis with 6 small nipples. He imagines them differently. Actually got very defensive about how it makes sense the silent hand had massive mommy milkers. Their words, not mine. I left the campaign soon after, and Gaia too. There were a few other things, like how Yoko didn't get to introduce his character because the silent hand talked over everyone. He was very annoying in general. I really want to express how bad his talking over everyone habit was. So bad, it was just awful. I left the campaign after just under half a session because the problem player was just that bad. There is a lot about this story that I want to pick apart, and this is probably the first time I'm going to do this, and hopefully I don't make this a trend, because this one actually got under my skin a little bit, and here's why. First things first, when he introduces each player, minus the DM and himself, he finds some way of talking down about them or demeaning them in some way before giving them some form of praise. With the girlfriend of James, it was the name he gave her. With James, it was them being a bisexual furry, kind of a weird nomer just to throw in there when James' sexuality doesn't matter to the story at all. Followed by Gaia, stating that the first impression was off-putting, especially when introducing them as being a trans femme furry who likes anime. Then with Yoko, being the alpha male energy and obsessed with J-Schlatt, despite J-Schlatt not really doing that kind of stuff, considering the fact that he has a gamer subs flavor called Titty Milk. It's not really his MO. Okay. Then there's the fact that he compliments the DM's ability to maintain roleplay. And I bring this up because he really drags on with James about it. Now granted, the use of substance abuse as part of James' character may have been a bit uncalled for, and probably should have been discussed with the group, yes, but that's still, yes, okay, James is being cringe, alright, but that's not a horror story. We have all had a D&D player that we played with who is cringe, but that's normal. That's just part of D&D. You're gonna have cringy people, but the point of it is to laugh with them and not laugh at them, which is what OP is doing here. And that's why I'm actually pretty upset with it. This is someone who very early on stated they have problems with talking over people. This was something that should have been accounted for and possibly even brought up as, hey James, give us a moment to actually talk about this here. You're talking over people, the thing that you mentioned in the first place. Simply communicating with them. Yes, James was being annoying with talking over people. That is effect of it. But the fact that this is also an unreliable narrator gives me a lot of pause for question. And I also don't want to be putting labels on James here, but the way that James is described, especially with the comment about how he talks very fast and panicked, this gives me signs that James might be neurodivergent or even has signs of autism. And if that's the case, he's essentially just ragging on an autistic furry for the sake of just the fact that they're awkward around other people. Followed by flaming their art in like a Reddit thread and just kind of going over that. I didn't even notice the fact they were big-chested, and he says that James tried to explain it, but that wasn't a major part of the story, which means that it wasn't a major focus. If James at any point was like, I want to fit through this tiny space, but my mommy milkers are too big, that's one thing. And I'm sure that if something like that had happened, that would have been included in detail, but it wasn't. Which tells me that this was just their character design and in passing. So of course, yes, James is gonna get defensive about their character design. It's just how it is with people and their characters and their OCs. And I want to state, yes, James was being a cringy little edgelord. That's just part of how some people play the game. You gotta learn to work around that. And as someone who claims to be a DM, you should know this. And now we get to the rules. And this is the part that I'm excited for because I actually got my books out for this. And oh boy. Now, in the comment section below, he mentioned that the characters are level 1. This is going to be extremely important. Because of the fact they're level 1, it doesn't make sense that James, being a Shadow Monk, was able to use Sneak Attack, a feature of rogues. Now, James also got defensive when being called a rogue. It could have been that his first level was in fact a rogue, but he wanted to keep it secret because players sometimes hide their backstories from other players. Or in the cases of various magic users and warlocks, hide the source of magic because maybe it's frowned upon in the current campaign setting or just the general society that they're role-playing in. So maybe James was simply actually a rogue, but claiming to be a Shadow Monk as part of their character. That's why he may have gotten so defensive. Which it fits in well because monks and rogues are both dex-based character builds. And originally, before I actually, realized that he made the comment about them being level 1, I went through my book here and I decided to take a look. All right, let's take a look at the Shadow Monks. Well, they do have an ability called Shadow Step, which my first thought was maybe James got this confused and simply used the name Sneak Attack for the Shadow Monk's attribute for Shadow Step, which is a 6th level ability the monk gains, which reads, at level 6 you gain the ability to step from one shadow into another. When you are in dim light or darkness, as a bonus action you can teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see that is also in dim light or darkness. You then have advantage on the first melee attack you make before the end of the turn. That sounds like a sneak attack. So then I went and I double-checked the rogue, which of course it's, Sneak Attack not by name. Because I was wondering, oh, is he multi-classing a Shadow Monk with the rogue? So then I rode the Sneak Attack one. Beginning at first level, you know how to strike subtly. First level, by the way, which means level 7 is the maximum this can be. You strike subtly and exploit a foe's distraction. Once per turn, you can deal an extra 1d6 damage to a creature you hit with an attack if you have the advantage on the attack roll. The attack must use finesse or a ranged weapon. Oh, so finesse. That might be a hamper because monks use fist. Oh, what's this? In the very beginning of the monk, what's a primary weapon they're gifted? Oh, what's that? It's a short sword. A finesse weapon. So by all means, yes, it is very possible for a Shadow Monk to do a sneak attack with a finesse weapon. It makes sense for a multi-class. But according to the comment section, they're level 1 and he did the attack rolls. So which that led me to the realization, okay, maybe he just spec'd with Rogue in an attempt to get this later, because that makes sense. Then, that's when I realized the Aasimar wing thing. According to the Monsters of the Multiverse, at least in my edition, page 7 for the Aasimars, you don't get your wings until level 3. So that means he's full of shit. Either that or he's inconsistent with how he wants to apply the rulebook, which is probably more likely and he just wants to find more reasons to be mad at James. I think James is a cringy little edgelord, of course, but I also think that OP here is being way too harsh, and this isn't a D&D horror story. This is just him dealing with a cringy player. Now, I will try to avoid, ripping into stories that are either bullshit or they're clearly the asshole or part of the problem in the situation. Unless you guys like it, then I'll continue doing this. This one is brought to us by Pathologic Utopia. Am I the asshole for not wanting my character's faith to be changed by another player? This is, of course, a player story. This is my second experience playing D&D, which ended very quickly and very sadly. My first experience was trying to run a campaign as a DM among my friends, which also ended very quickly and very sadly due to family drama, but that's a separate story. So, one of the players from that failed campaign wanted to run the campaign himself, but in a smaller circle of friends, and what happened, well, I will tell you now. The main people of this story are my friend and DM, the DM, his girlfriend, a wizard, and another friend, a cleric, as well as me, being me, the warrior. First of all, I'll give you a little backstory of my character as it's important to the plot. I decided not to be very original and created a warrior character, but he was a tiefling and came from a family that was famous for their paladins who were fanatically devoted to the local good deity. But my character was not accepted as a paladin because he was born a tiefling. Anyway, my character's goal, as I conceived it, would be to follow the teachings of his goddess to prove himself worthy of becoming a paladin. And just as a quick, side note, that is by all means a solid character. It gives you the option to multi-class as a paladin later on once you are, able to actually earn your character's backstory's motive. Pretty good. The beginning of the company was supposed to be standard. All of us meeting at a tavern, etc., etc. My character was sitting quietly in the tavern drinking a beer when the cleric entered the tavern. Cleric. Have the warrior roll the dice, followed by snickering and laughter. DM. Roll the dice for Constitution. And of course me, passing the check. DM. Nothing happens, but you notice an obscure hunched figure in a hoodie approaching the bar near you. Me. Can I get a good look at him? Cleric. Have him roll the dice. DM, roll the dice for intelligence and constitution. Me, I rolled the dice. DM, you don't know what this creature is, but it remotely reminds you of a mushroom. The wizard joins us, and we have a few words with her, which are once again interrupted by the cleric's request to roll the constitution check. It should be noted that the wizard was not an easy one. She was one of those whose favorite spell was fist, and she walked everywhere with a staff on the weight, more like a barbell. So, after finishing her dialogue with me, the wizard stuck her staff/barbell into the floor, to which the cleric reacted. Repent! Wizard, what? Cleric, repent! Wizard, no. I'm leaving this asylum. After that, the cleric, who's a player, decided to attack the wizard with his whip. Before that, there was a small argument between the DM and the cleric about whether the super unusual whip should do stabbing or crushing damage. I, who sensed the company was going the wrong way, intercepted his arm and prevented him from striking, then also blocked the wizard's attack on the cleric to prevent a fight. In the end, she left the madhouse and the cleric shouted, "How dare you raise your hand against a holy man!" and announced that he was releasing a cloud of spores. The DM again asked me to do a constitution check, which I passed, but a couple of visitors to the place who had fallen under his control did not. I should say that by this point the wizard had already left the room where we were playing. I had to admit that I did my part too, since my character's name was funny and contrasted with his serious nature, so she just assumed that we had decided to turn the standard D&D company into a circus. Now, when I see what's going on in the tavern, namely that an unidentified creature first attacks one customer without warning and then takes control of a couple more, I decided to get as far away from the creature as possible and fire a crossbow bolt at it. The villagers, under the cleric's control, begin to approach him and give him money. Next was the cleric's move. He started telling the DM that I shouldn't have attacked him at all because in these lands the core belief is centered around people worshiping him, and that I shouldn't have attacked him at all knowing that. And no, I didn't know these facts before the game started. My character wasn't from these lands and I don't think he had heard of it. The DM asked me to make a history check, which I didn't pass, although I think if I'm claiming my character didn't know it, I shouldn't have had to make a check, but I might be wrong. It depends on the DM's rules with these kind of choices, really. Personally, though, I think it's bad practice. So the fight continued. The cleric, again, wanted me to roll dice for a constitution check. That is excessive. To which I countered that I had moved a considerable distance away from his spore cloud and shouldn't have made the check, but the DM told me to roll the dice anyway, just with an advantage. And that's when I realized that every time I rolled the constitution check, the cleric was trying to bend my character to his will. To say that I didn't like the prospect of having my character subjugated by another player is putting it mildly. I voiced my displeasure outside of the character to the DM. To which the cleric replied that it wasn't really mind control because people under the influence of his spores themselves want to honor him, and the fact that they started carrying their money to him is of their own free will because of their faith in him. To this I countered that if my character suddenly lost faith in his deity and started honoring the cleric's character, it would completely kill the whole idea of him wanting to become a paladin. The cleric suggested that I could become a paladin who would worship him. I'll omit unnecessary details, but the DM tried to keep our company by splitting us up for a while. The wizard and I went shopping while the cleric went to the temple, where he used his spores to not subdue a small crowd. So we had to guard the trade caravan as a small quest. Small detail, the cleric wanted to take a couple of his minions with him, but the DM didn't allow it, apparently because the wizard started looking at the exit again. As a reminder, the DM's girlfriend is the wizard. It ended when I tried to talk to the cleric while traveling and convince him not to brainwash my character with his spores. He refused and said he would keep trying to convert my character and that I didn't realize we'd get a lot of bonuses if he did. Kind of by design. If we were brainwashed with spores, we would have some bonuses in the game. But the argument that it was more important to me, my character's story, than increasing a couple of numbers on my character sheet didn't convince him. During this argument, the wizard left us again, which was the end of our D&D campaign. The next day, I talked to the wizard about the game, and by all accounts, the whole thing with the spores that were supposed to brainwash our characters and make them worship the character's character was fully approved by the DM. It was only her assumption, but it seems to be true, because first of all, the DM did not prevent the cleric from using spores on our characters, and secondly, the cleric could not give our characters in-game bonuses without the DM's consent. Well, now the big question is, maybe I am the asshole and it really is my fault that the company fell apart and I should have just accepted the fact that I had to henceforth play a character honoring another player character and enjoy the cool perks. What would that have gotten me? Yeah, no, you're good. This is actually just bullshit. The whole spore thing is excessive. There's oh my god. This is a character who wants to be like the center of attention. They don't fully understand the point of D&D. They want to play something quirky and they don't realize that, oh, I'm actually getting frustrated with this one. Normally, when my players have an idea that they want their character to be, I have a couple of rules. One, rule of cool. Is it cool for them to do that? Is it going to make it more interesting in the gameplay? 2, it cannot affect another player's experience. And 3, it's also got to be kind of balanced, and if they're going to just introduce it, I got to be able to make adjustments as the game goes on, just in case they discover something game-breaking. With those rules in place, I'm usually pretty open to what a player might want to introduce as their character, because the D&D guidebooks are simply that, guidebooks. Like, beyond the absurdity of making them do multiple constitution checks back to back to back, which just means that they are inevitably going to end up failing at some point, so that's bullshit. And I can only imagine that this was probably a first-time DM or a very new DM. My main thing here is, as a DM, do not sacrifice your other player's comfortability as well as their fun for another player's power trip. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Press and Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.